Hello! Welcome back to the MudRoom. This is our first class of 2019, and I am so excited to kick things off in the new year. I hope that everyone had wonderful holidays. I hope your kids didn't wake you up at ungodly hours, that the sugar crashes were manageable, and the overstimulation was minor. Tall orders there. We luckily fared pretty well in our household. And now it is a brand spanking new year, and I am so pumped. Clean slate. There are so many exciting things I have planned for Uncommon Sense Parenting this year. I have a full slate of topics prepared for the second season of the MudRoom, but I'm not going to bore you with all the details of that right now. It's 2019, so let's start with a bang. All right, so hey Anna! Now, as you may have noticed, I am trying something a little new out and scheduling these broadcasts ahead of time. So my goal from now on is to schedule these on Sunday, and that way I can share them into the Parenting Posse before I turn the camera on, so y'all don't have to stare at my ear for 3 minutes every week. So, since I do not have to do that, just go ahead and say hi. If you're watching the replay, drop me a replay in the comments. If you're shy, just do me a solid and like this video so that Facebook knows I have at least some entertainment value. Not much, but some. Woohoo! Okay. I am using a new program, so my comments are in a different spots. Y'all are just gonna have to give me like just a hot second to kind of find everything because I've never done this before. Anna's here, Sarah's here, Jennifer's here, Danielle is here. Hey, yay, Happy New Year. Okay, awesome. I am so excited. All right. This is awesome. Everything is working the way it should. That never ever happens. Okay, so the second season of the MudRoom. Allow me to introduce myself. I'm so excited that I'm stumbling over my own words. Allow me to introduce myself. For those of you who are new around here, my name is Allana Robinson, and I am a parenting effectiveness coach. I help parents of toddlers and preschoolers understand why their children are misbehaving and what to do about it without yelling, shaming, or using time outs. So tonight, we're going to chat about what I call the limbic leap. I've talked about this before in the Parenting Posse. I actually did an audio live stream about a year and a half ago. And to be honest, it wasn't really meant to be consumed as widely as it has been. Wow. I'm out of practice, y'all. I had a bunch of members at that time asking about this topic at the same time. So rather than like type out the explanation to several people several times, I just like hopped on an audio live stream on the fly. I was half asleep. Someone called my phone in the middle of it. I was having a really hard time pronouncing amygdala, which I still have a really hard time doing. I blame it on the French in me. The sounds just don't like coalesce well in my mouth. But anyways, it just wasn't well prepared or well done, which means, of course, it's turned into one of the most popular topics I've ever spoken on, because why not? So it is time for a redo. I find parents are better able to cope with challenging behavior when they understand what's behind it and why it's happening. And this leap takes place at a time when most parents are expecting their child to be becoming more independent and just generally more stable. And that's age 4, right? They're out of toddlerhood, they're entering preschoolerhood, they can walk and talk and clearly do a lot more of their own self-care. They're very clearly no longer babies. They even stop looking like babies, right? They're losing all of their chub. So a lot of parents are feeling like they can start to back off a bit more. And then this leap hits. Whoa, okay. Hey, Emily. Hey, Leah. Hey, Heidi. Thanks for being here with me tonight. So before we get into what the limbic leap is, let's just quickly get everyone on the same page about some vocabulary, because none of this is going to make sense if you don't know what the limbic system is and its basic parts. So the limbic system is part of your brain that deals primarily with 3 things: emotions, memory, and arousal. So physically, it comprises of a bunch of different areas in the brain, like the amygdala, the hippocampus, thalamus, hypothalamus, basal ganglia, and cingulate gyrus. I've heard it pronounced both ways. So this system is responsible for kind of bridging our primitive mental functions and our higher mental functions. And when I say higher, I do mean physically higher. Our more base functions are physically lower in our brain, and our higher mental functions, thinking, analyzing, evaluating, etc., are physically toward the top of our brain. So what we're mainly concerned about with here is the amygdala, which is kind of like the security system for the brain. It is constantly scanning our environment for danger, and when it detects it, because it's also responsible for our emotional reactivity, it puts us into fight, flight, freeze, or fib, right? It ups our arousal. Now at 4-ish years old, and like everything developmental, there's a spectrum of when these developmental changes occur. 4 is kind of like average, but in and around 4, most parents start to notice that their child is extremely emotional about everything. Everything is a personal attack. And I mean literally everything. Everything. You look at them sideways and they're sobbing. They suddenly can't do things that they have literally been doing independently for months, if not years. They can't put their shoes on. They can't reach the ketchup that is like literally inches from their hand. They asked for the blue cup, not the red one. Their favorite toy doesn't go there. And it's really distressing for absolutely everyone in the family, because it doesn't seem to matter how innocuous the action, it's perceived as an attack. They get extremely weepy and angry, and they can't tell you why they're upset most of the time, which is a very clear indication of stress behavior versus misbehavior. So, now that you know what the limbic system is and what the amygdala is, why do you think this might be happening? Because that area of the brain is growing fast. When you look at charts of the physical volume of the amygdala, you can see that the growth of it around approximately 4 years old is rapid. There is a lot of activity going on in there. And what happens when there's a lot of activity in one very specific area of the brain? It's growing neurons and synapses really fast, and that means that things kind of misfire and get thrown way out of whack. Brains are electrical. That's why we say that neurons fire, because they actually fire an electrical impulse. So imagine rewiring your house without turning off the power first. You wouldn't do that, because wires can get crossed that shouldn't be and cause electricity to go places that it shouldn't, right? Basic home reno 101. That's basically what's happening when you've got new neurons and synapses showing up all over the place, right? Wires get crossed. Things misfire. Impulses are going in places that they weren't necessarily intended to go. And that means that the amygdala is just very active, very alert, very sensitive, hypersensitive. Annetta says, my girl is 3.5 and is doing exactly what you just described. Yes. Yes, that, and there's sometimes a lot of people, and this happens a lot in my membership program, the Brain Skills Play Blueprint, we'll be talking in there and somebody will be like, I think we've hit the limbic leap. And then 6 months on, they're like, oh, no, I was wrong. This is the limbic leap, right? They tend to have little like micro jumps, micro leaps leading up to this like granddaddy leap. Because, well, we're not robots. We don't schedule our upgrades. So, I mean, when you look at like charts of like physical volume and growth and stuff like that, there's always like those 1 or 2 kids who are like way up here, way early. And so it is possible that like a 3.5-year-old is having like the actual limbic leap. Don't bank on it though. Most people that are like, oh yeah, they're totally like, I think we're in the limbic leap. Just hang on to your hats. Wait until they're actually 4. This is a granddaddy leap. And it sucks. It sucks. Your 4-year-old's amygdala is throwing up the fight, flight, freeze, fib alarm for things that aren't threats all the time. Like I said, it's like the security system of the brain. So anyone who has installed a home security system knows that you generally have to like fiddle with it a bit when you install it to figure out that sweet spot for the sensitivity of it. You know, so that it's alerting to things that you actually want to monitor, like people, but it's not going off every time like a wayward leaf or the neighborhood feral cat slinks by. Same concept. Because there's so much activity going on up there, the sensitivity is dialed way up. So it's alerting for every tiny little thing that crosses its path instead of just like chilling and waiting for like the actual attacks. Everything is a saber-toothed tiger to a 4-year-old. So that means that no, your 4-year-old isn't possessed and they aren't doing this on purpose to manipulate you. It's unfortunate that parents tend to have a second child around the time their oldest turns 4. It's very typical that there's either a new baby in the house or that their younger sibling is beginning to be more mobile and independent. So many parents mistake this leap as some kind of reaction to the change in family dynamics. And it kind of is, but not because they're trying to like manipulate you into making them the center of attention again. It's because anything remotely new or difficult, no matter how small, would set their alarm off anyways. So like in Ontario, where I live, children typically start junior kindergarten at age 4, and in many states, they have a similar program called transitional kindergarten, and it starts at age 4 too. A lot of parents also think this behavior is a reaction to the changes in expectations and routine. And again, it is. But not because they're necessarily inherently struggling with the transition, just because it's remotely new and different and their internal alarm system is already primed. So what are we going to do about this? Okay, I'm so used to Facebook not scrolling when I get new comments that now I'm like paranoid that I'm going to miss something, but this actually scrolls. Awesome. Okay, so what are we going to do about this? This leap can last anywhere from a few months to their entire 4th year and slightly into their 5s. Fun, right? It is difficult to say the least. I'm coming off of it. My oldest turned 5 in November, and I think I can finally say that we are genuinely past it and we're just kind of getting some aftershocks now. He was one of those ones that it was just the whole of 4. It gets really old really fast as a parent. So the answer to what do we do is that you need to ensure that your child feels as safe as possible. Up the predictability and consistency in your lives. Just dial it up a couple of notches. Focus on teaching them how to actively calm down. Focus on good breathing habits. Focus on integrating their implicit and explicit thoughts. Talk about what it is that is going on very calmly to help them think critically about whether what they're experiencing is a threat. Acknowledge their feelings. Think about the last time that you were super stressed for more than a very short period of time. It was exhausting, wasn't it? So cut the kids some slack. Remove expectations that aren't really all that important. up the consistency on the ones that aren't negotiable, and be aware that they're operating from a place of inherent stress. And I often throw that out there when parents are asking about 4-year-old behaviors, and I'm like, well, okay, so first of all, they're 4, so they're inherently stressed. And people generally get all uppity and go, what does a 4-year-old have to be stressed about? You know, it doesn't matter that you think they've got it cushy and there's nothing to be stressed about. We're not talking about stress as adults understand stress, which is being worried about things. We're talking about stress as energy expenditure. So anything that you expend energy on is a stressor. So if a 4-year-old is spending most of their energy trying to regulate their brain's hypervigilance, heck, yes, they are inherently stressed. They are in an inherently depleted energy state, which means they don't have as much energy to devote to social niceties, keeping their body still, that's a huge one, paying attention for long periods of time, and doing things that are boring to them. Does that mean we just let them be rude, run around like primates on cocaine, and do whatever they want? No. It just means we have to be aware of their inherently depleted state and set the bar to a happy medium instead of like super, super high. Your 4-year-old cannot be polite and sit still for a 3-hour visit with Aunt Mildred. They physically can't. So either meet Aunt Mildred somewhere where your child can do like the 20-minute calm lunch and then go be less contained, keep the visit short, or just let them skip it. Make sure your expectations are in line with their actual abilities as a child who is inherently stressed just by virtue of their developmental stage. And when you grasp that, and you look at your 4-year-old through that lens, suddenly you want to help them and guide them and calm them down. You're not so worried anymore about the surface symptomatic behavior. You're worried about removing the stress so they can think straight. And that's way more empathetic. It's way more helpful, and it's way more productive. You're going to get way more mileage out of that. Janelle says, such fun. Yeah. I feel you. Jamie then says, my almost 5-year-old is definitely still there. Yeah, Jamie, we're the lucky ones. I kept thinking my oldest was like coming off of it, and then I was like, nope, we are right still there. We have not gotten off of this. Now I think I can safely say, knock on wood, that we are pretty much past it, and we're just getting a few little like aftershocks. He's still pretty newly 5. Janelle says, I can't imagine it gets old fast. Yeah, because you feel like you're walking on eggshells around people all the time, right? You don't want to stress them out more because you know that they are stressed. I don't recommend doing that. Like, don't walk on eggshells about them, but just be aware of the fact that just by the fact that they are 4, they are stressed. My grandmother, God rest her soul, my grandmother used to say that, 2s weren't so bad because they were still like cute and chubby and baby looking. 3s were starting to wear on your nerves. By 4, they're not so cute anymore and you're just frustrated. And unfortunately, that's when they need the most understanding and they actually need the most help. I personally found 4 way more trying than 2 or 3. Emily says, my 4-year-old is limbic leaping and going through physical growth spurts, sometimes alternatively and sometimes together. Yikes, what can I do around food to help him? My husband wants to remove the stress by feeding him whenever he's hungry. That's one way to do it. I mean, you can do that. I guess it depends on your family's like feeding dynamic. I definitely kept snacks available for my son because for me it was more important that he be calm than he eat a huge dinner. So if he wanted to kind of snack throughout the day and eat a smaller dinner, that was fine. He's always been a grazer. I just made sure the snacks that were available to him were pretty healthy, like, vegetables that he can like chew on and berries, grapes, things that I really like go for it, kid, eat as much of that as you want, that I was okay with. If it's like, I wouldn't be like feeding him, spoon feeding him. And sometimes you just have to like call it and be like, okay, I see it, you're stressed. We're just gonna remove this right now. When it comes to 4-year-olds, you kind of have to figure out where your line in the sand is, and then that's the boundary that you're going to maintain no matter what. And when I say like up the consistency, try not to move that boundary, that line, like absolute bare minimum line in the sand ever. Try and keep it, hold that boundary like a concrete wall, because when you let that boundary fall, it just makes things so much worse. Like, they need that consistency to stay safe. So if you've had existing boundaries that have been immovable, that have been consistent their whole life, and now that they're 4, they're like melting down over it, and you're like, okay, I can remove this stress by changing this boundary, letting go of this boundary. Don't. It makes it worse. Okay? Boundaries are safety. Predictability is safety. Consistency is safety. When we start becoming unpredictable and inconsistent, and we're actually going to talk more about this next week, it freaks our kids out. It just makes that security system go, danger, 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 way more, right? They already don't feel safe. So we want to make sure to make things as predictable and consistent as possible. And I said, we'll get more into that like next week. Jade said, currently still riding the Limbic Leap train. Toot toot. Very proud, though, that my 4-year-old didn't freak out when my almost 2-year-old messed up her game of concentration. Oh, that's impressive. Instead, she replied, it's okay, he's still learning, so maybe the end is nearing, fingers crossed. Fingers crossed! I had moments like that too while my 4-year-old was leaping pretty hard, where I was like, oh, that was like so self-aware, and you used your emotional control, you used your impulse control, you used your self-monitoring. Oh, maybe we're coming out the other side, and then it would like hit again like a brick wall. So I'm hoping, fingers crossed for you, Jade, because it sucks. It sucks. But yeah, like we've talked a bit about before, about how children can't use their executive functions, they can't access their executive functions when they're stressed, because, as I said, those are up in the top of our brain, and when we're stressed, when we feel like we're in danger, all the blood goes to the lower part of our brain, which is what's keeping us safe, right? Our brain goes, okay, no, I'm in danger. We're going to put all our resources towards the part that is going to keep me physically intact. So that's why 4-year-olds are all of a sudden like super helpless, and they can't remember anything, and they're whining, and they like all their executive functions seem to just go out the window. And I've seen this again, my BSPB members, they're like making such huge strides, and then 4 hits, and they're like, oh my God, what happened? Like, we were doing so well. They didn't lose their executive functions. They just lost temporary access to them. And when we help them calm down, when we really focus on self-reg, we help them learn how to actively calm down, which is hard. It's a whole process. That's when we open that door back up to their higher functions, and they can actually like use those skills. They don't go away, they just kind of go dormant. Okay, so that is the limbic leap. I am fairly certain that nobody else calls it the limbic leap. I have Googled it. Googled it. It doesn't appear to be a term that anyone else has coined, so I am taking it for my own because, well, yes, it's primarily in the amygdala. The amygdala leap doesn't sound as good, and the amygdala can't work on its own. There's the whole system there. So, they're all doing their jobs too. Okay, so I hope that was helpful. I hope it filled in some gaps for those of you who've listened to the rambling, slightly incoherent first draft version that I can now retire. I hope it gives a lens change to those of you who are hearing it for the first time. If you found this helpful, you will likely find my scripts for managing crazy making behavior helpful too. So if you haven't downloaded them yet, by all means, go grab those. They're linked in the description. Okay, I think that's it. Happy New Year again. Thank you so much for being here with me tonight, and I will see you all next week for another Uncommon Sense parenting class. Ciao!